Howdy, everybody. Welcome back into Take Two with Hawk. He is the Hawk, Dr. Brent Hawkins, Superintendent of Schools for CCISD. I'm Copperas Cove ISD Director of Communications, Kurtis Quillen. Dr. Hawkins, how are you this morning?
Couldn't be better on a homecoming morning.
We are back off the road now for this podcast, back in our home digs. My office is basically what that translates to. It is Friday, September 19th, 2025, as we record this. That is the day of the Bulldog homecoming game against Del Valle. So as you're listening to this, we hope you're driving to meet us at Bulldog Stadium. Dr. Hawkins, that brings me to our good things that we always start with. Homecoming. What does homecoming mean to you?
Well, it's the first in Dog Nation, and so it's been great. You know, I went this morning to the field house, and you know, the quarterback club has their meeting every Friday at 7:30, and so I went over there and just to see the kids, and you know, I'm pretty proud of those kids. You know, after tonight we'll be 3-1, and so I'm gonna go ahead and be like Joe Namath and make that a prediction. I know those kids are hungry, unless we just you know, go out there and the good Lord has a different plan. I think it's going to be a very exciting homecoming. You know, just if what we had last week is any indication of what's to come tonight, you know, what better environment could you be in anywhere in the state of Texas than in Bulldog Stadium tonight? So that's very exciting for me.
That's one of the things that I think I noticed at the home opener last week against Georgetown is, one, the progress that program and that the band program has made under new leadership both is outstanding. And I don't think people understand just how difficult that road has been to navigate for both Rodney Southern as the new head football coach and athletic director, and for Mario Morales, the new director of instrumental music. But then that Bulldog spirit just seemed more evident. That's one of the largest crowds I've seen in that stadium, not just in my time working in the district, but I was a reporter covering high school football in this area for 7 years, and so that crowd was awesome.
Yeah, and you know, I think the opportunity was there. We were one penalty away from being 3-0 for the first time in 15 years. And I was very excited for the kids just to have that opportunity. And you know, I coached football, basketball, and track in my former life, and I just think that, you know, as a head basketball coach, you know, a lot of times the ball just doesn't bounce right, and it didn't last Friday night. But it was a wonderful game. I think the kids made some great strides. I think that the program itself, when you take Mario or you take Rodney and you come in new, you're competing against folks in established programs. And you know, when you've established yourself and established your program, you've put the identity on it, you've put the brand on it, and then here comes somebody else that may have been established somewhere else, but they're really trying to get all of the dynamics going in the right direction. You know, personally, when I saw the Bleacher Creatures, I think we've turned the corner, you know, because that's really what we're about when we're talking about one pack, one purpose. You know, that Friday night is our largest classroom, and to have those 4-year-olds all the way up, and just the mass amount of them that ran out, you know, really shows what we're trying to do. We really want folks to have pride in being a Bulldog, support those kids in all of the events and all the activities that's going on a Friday night. And then aside from that, make sure that those 4-year-olds understand the responsibility and the weight of what it is to be a Bulldog, the commitment, the preparation. It starts early, and to have all that unity out there on the field was something special.
Obviously, Bulldog football is off to a good start, but so is Lady Dog volleyball. District play underway, sitting in first place, undefeated in district play. And you've gotten to see them play at 19 years in a row, having been on that playoff bracket, chasing 20 this year.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing of that is a different dynamic. You know, Coach had a lot of kids that she graduated last year, and when you do that, you got to reload, and it wasn't necessarily that there was a big class to reload behind, and so you've got some young kids that are learning and finding their way and going to be a lady dog for some time to come, and so that's exciting. But then to see them turn the corner and have success, I think is a great thing, and a very much we're very much looking forward to 5 o'clock tonight and watching them at the gymnasium.
Let's move on to kind of a little bit of a shorter episode than what people are used to. So just a reminder that the last 3 episodes, we did those on the road. If you've seen Bond 2025 at this point, 3 campuses are included in that proposal. So we did an episode in the print shop at Copperas Cove High School with Bowie Franks from Gallagher Construction. We did an episode with Hudson Henderson from GLS of Texas. That is the architect firm that the district has partnered with after reviewing several and taking it to the board. Hudson joined us in the Fairview Jewell cafeteria to discuss school architecture. And then Robert Turner, CCISD Director of Career and Technical Education and College Career and Military Readiness, joined us on our most recent episode in the Cove Junior High cafeteria as we work to inform you. And so those episodes are there. We're going to touch on the bond here in a bit. But first, and this is something that always comes up during the school year, and understandably so, from parents, bullying. And so there is, in my experience, there is a parent's understanding, there is the law, and there's a kind of a to me, it seems like a gap in between the two. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I want to hand it off to you so that we can try and help people understand that how we go about the investigations whenever there is a report made.
Yeah, so I think the thing with bullying is just like I remember back to my high school days, and I know some of you listening are probably younger than me, but when a cop showed up on campus, that was a huge event for us because we didn't have school resource officers. Back when I was in school, we didn't even have assistant principals, and we did have a paddle down there that kept us in line on most days. But society's changed since then drastically. Schools have changed since then. As much as people would like to say, that we're the same old and we're outdated and we're a dinosaur, that's not true. But I think today, when we have cops on campuses, so it just becomes we become desensitized, and it's just part of operations. And I think the same thing has happened with bullying, and so we go back to bullying. Bullying, from a historical stance, you look back into the Bible in the early days, the early books of the Torah. There was bullying going on at that time, and it's not stopped. And so when people say, "Hey, there's bullying going on in my kid's school," there's bullying going on all over the world. And a lot of times you'll see it on social media. Hey, there's bullying going on at this school or whatever. Well, there's bullying going on the social media platform too. As human beings, unfortunately, that's a behavior that is very old and very current. And so it's so important that if you go on the CCISD website and you pull up board policy FFI, we have both legal and local policy directed to bullying. And so there's a definition on there that I would encourage parents to look up the legal definition of bullying to see what that is. It means a single significant act or a pattern of act by one or more people that exploits an imbalance of power, and it goes on to more things. But I think from a parent standpoint, I'm still a parent at heart, because I always say that, you know, we got a tick under 8,000 kids here, and you know, I want to always make a decision from a parent's cap on my head with that decision. I want to put myself, you know, in the lens of a parent and make a decision, because I know that parents want what's best for their child, and I want what's best for all of our Bulldogs. We want to make sure that all of our kids are treated fairly, with dignity, respect. I mean, that's our goal. We think that when parents drop their kids off at school, or they put them on the school bus, or however they get here, that the first thing that they want from their kid is for their kid to be loved at school. And so that, I mean, that's equally my goal as well. And so from that standpoint, a lot of times, here's the power of public schools. And, you know, I can get all these homeschool people that, you know, public schools can't talk without homeschool people jumping in and projecting whatever issue that they have. Look, there's a place for homeschooling, and I'm not, you know, being disrespectful of homeschooling, but there's also things that is so powerful about public schools. You go to convocation and you see the atmosphere and energy that those teachers and staff members have for our kids. Come to the football game tonight and you'll see that same energy and atmosphere. But in society, one of the things that we have to teach our kids is how to fit into society. And kids throughout our school are learning that, and, you know, in age appropriately learning it, because what a third grader, a sixth grader, a ninth grader, and a senior learn about interacting with their peers and classmates is on different parts of the spectrum. And probably the hardest part, or the hardest area to learn that, is in the middle school, because kids are coming in with different dynamics about, you know, trying to fit in and what their identity is and who their friends are. And, you know, it's tough in our kids' lives, and as parents, we want to shelter them, and we want to make sure that we protect them, because that's what parents are supposed to do, is to protect their kids. But that is something that it takes a partnership with parents, and it takes a partnership with the school in order to feasibly do that. You know, we've got kids that we need to make sure, number one, that they're loved. Number two, that when somebody says something ugly to them, like, you know, Kurtis, I don't like your shoes. Well, that's not really bullying Kurtis. You know, me and Kurtis is classmates. I don't like Kurtis's shoes. But Kurtis may be coming from a standpoint that, you know, he's feeling a little insecure about himself, and it hurt his feelings. And so we've got to help kids navigate those things and have healthy relationships. But the thing unequivocally that we can't have is students who are experiencing bullying. When it rises to the level and it meets this definition of bullying, we have a very good student code of conduct that can kick in and to make sure that those things don't happen. And so from a parent standpoint, what does a parent need to know? Number one, you need to know your kid's loved in Cove. And there's a lot of dedicated teachers and staff members that love the kids. And on a side note that I think is so special, if you haven't been on Facebook and you haven't seen the homecoming sign with all of the kids that have been Bulldogs before, that went off and got their degree and come back and are teaching, it's got a whole that is so impressive to me, because what that says is, I love my community. I love Bulldog Nation. Somebody poured into me. Somebody made an impact on me, and now I'm coming back to carry on that same legacy. But when you saw all those kids' names on that hallway that had been Bulldogs, and now they're young professionals that had come back and they're teaching in their school, that says more about Cove and the brand that we have than anything else I can say. And so that's the love that your kids is going to get here. The second thing is that as a parent, that we need to work together to help your kid. I highly encourage, we've got to get your kid involved in something. We have more clubs and organizations and activities than any other school anywhere per capita. And so we need to get your kid involved in something, because I think that develops character. It gives them a sense of belonging. I think that's critically important. We need to make sure that we work with the home to teach our kids how to cope with and deal with and interact with peers in a positive way. And then lastly, if your kid is experiencing some type of bullying, I highly encourage you to reach out to that campus principal, assistant principal. You can report anonymously, however you want to do it. I'm not a fan of this anonymous reporting deal. I'm a eye to eye, live and in color type guy. So I encourage people to talk to your principal. Let's work through this. There's stay away agreements. There's the code of conduct. What's going to happen is you make a report, that assistant principal, and I guarantee this is our policy. That assistant principal, the point of contact, is going to investigate and figure out exactly all of the fact pattern. Does this meet the definition of bullying? And if it doesn't, then what do we need to do to fix the issue? If it does meet the definition of bullying, then there's steps and the applicability of our policy that kicks in and comes into play. Maybe a stay away agreement. They may change students' classes. They may do some counseling with those students. They may invoke the student code of conduct and administer consequences, but things happen. And then from the last standpoint of parents that I would say is that they're going to get a report in writing from that assistant principal that says, hey, this is our findings, and here's kind of, the process we went through. And so, it's not just a deal where you come and you express your displeasure, but there will be an investigation and there will be action taken along the way. And then the last thing I would say about bullying is, October is kind of a bullying awareness month.
Yeah.
And so we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that we bring awareness to behavior and choices of behavior that is not acceptable. And that's not who we are as a school district, as a community, or as a student body.
So you kind of hit on it there, but when that report or that allegation of bullying is reported, that investigation starts immediately.
Exactly.
Is there, because I know this question is going to come up, is there an approximate timeline where a parent can expect for that investigation to be completed and receive that report after it's made?
Well, I think all investigations are different, but obviously, if there's bullying, that administrator is going to work through that process as expeditiously as possible, because the first thing that assistant principal has got to gauge is the information that is coming at the point of contact. Okay, so at the point of contact, what level of bullying is this? Because obviously there's differing degrees of bullying. Is this cyberbullying? Is this bullying face to face? And then where are we in that situation? Is this a situation to where a child has been bullied so much that they're just now coming forward and they're suicidal? Or is this just in the beginning? And so based on the continuum of where that is, there could be immediate, within the hour, action taken, and then it could be up to 48 hours based just on the severity and the sometimes it takes time to investigate and talk through to all of the actors involved to get a real thorough investigation so that all the facts can be vetted.
One of the other things, and this is something that I didn't learn until I worked in a school district, and so I want to ask about it. When they're going through these investigations, one of the things that the state lays out as part of that investigation is imbalance of power. is there a clean way to define what that imbalance of power is in the course of, or could be over the course of, a bullying investigation?
Well, I mean, is there a way to define it? I think no, because it comes from different ways. You know, I think the imbalance of power can come from, you know, a group of 3 kids that are, you know, tormenting a child, and obviously there's an imbalance in power. There's 3 kids that's tormenting this other child, but it doesn't always have to be a numeric imbalance. You know, we could have a senior kid that is hazing or initiating or doing something to a 18-year-old versus a 14-year-old. That's the imbalance of power. But it could also just come down to, you know, I raised 3 girls, and I know that in doing so, I'm a whole lot better girl dad today than I was 20 years ago, you know, because I understand the phases. You know, I wasn't a female. So you learn growth and development of children, and there's growth that they go through, and you could have another female that is on social media, and you could have a young lady that's struggling with, you know, her identity of who she is as a person, and that person could have a social media account and be taking an advantage of that child in a vulnerable state, and that would be an imbalance of power as well. So I think it can morph from different ways in different areas, that you've got to look at the fact pattern and clearly define, yes, this is an imbalance of power, and it rises to the level of being bullying.
Is there anything else you want to touch on while we're on this topic ahead of Bullying Prevention Month?
No, I just think that, you know, like I say, it's important that we don't overuse that word, because, you know, kids go through struggles, and we want to help them through those struggles. And then kids that are bullied, we know that bullying's in society, but when it is bullying, we need to make sure that it matches the legal definition of that. And then we need to make sure that we work together to make sure that there is an impeccable system of policies, regulations, and consequences and protections for kids that are being bullied, because we're not going to tolerate it. But I think a lot of times all of that gets confused, and if there's anything in society today, I think the whole aspect of bullying is the most miscommunicated thing that we deal with. And so I think it's important that we work together and that we communicate effectively, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing: all of our kids to be loved and to be the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be.
Again, if you have any questions or if you have any issues, start with your child's assistant principal or your campus principal. Have that conversation, and then there are steps outlined at CCISD.com if you need to take them.
And let me reiterate this, Kurtis, because this is, you know, there's zero tolerance with bullying. But if you see me at HEB on aisle 3, okay, and I'm pushing my buggy with my wife, and we're grocery shopping, and you come up to me at HEB and you tell me all of this situation, I'm going to refer you to that assistant principal, because that's what our policy says do. The problem is this: if you tell me all the fact pattern and you bias me in this situation, as it goes through the levels, I have to step back and have somebody else step in on my level. And I want to be objective through that process. And hopefully 99.9% of the time we can take care of that before it ever gets to me. But if you bring me in and you involve me on level 1, then I can't ever be level 3. And so it's important that the folks that we have out there is doing a good job at the point of contact. They're great people. I know they have the same same values that I have, that the parent has, and so just please trust the process, and we're going to get it right.
And what you're referring to there is the FNG grievance process. This year, at the addition at post September 1 of a fourth level. So now level 1 of a formal grievance is the campus principal.
Right.
Then level 2 is the administration in this building. 3 is the superintendent, you, and then level 4 is the board of trustees.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to another hot topic of conversation. And again, CCISD.com, your home for all information on the district, including how to report concerns for your student. Another hot topic of conversation, Williams Ledger Elementary School. Is there an update, or is the update at this point that there is no update?
Yeah, the greatest update, I think, is that I was in contact with the Texas Association of School Boards folks yesterday.
And they're the district's risk management insurance.
Right. And so they said that they should have some information from the adjusters on Monday. So once again, we hurry up and wait till Monday. But no, the campus itself, it's been, as Chip and Joanna Gaines say, demolition day. So we've got the inside of that thing all pulled apart, and it's sitting there, and it's waiting on the insurance company, the insurance adjusters, to give the final numbers of what we can do, what we can't do, in order to put that thing back together. So we're about to round the curve anyway. I'm not saying we're in the home stretch, but it
more
will
like
be
turn
a
one.
whole lot better feeling once we get through that. Because like I say, we've demolished everything inside, we've pulled everything out, and now we're ready to put it back together, but we're waiting on the bureaucracy to do that. And you know, last night I was at the Exchange Club, and I had a question on it, so I'll just reiterate, this has nothing to do with the bond. This is a strictly something that I think is a valuable lesson for our community, because that roof, you know, was built in about 1995 on top of that school. And roofs, you know, when you start to get out of warranty, you know, that Texas heat dry rots them, and they only last so long. And so that was the problem. It had been well beyond its life cycle. The life cycle of buildings in our school district are 52 years on average. And so, you know, we had that roof problem there, and you know, we're working real hard to put a plan together so that all of our roofs are under warranty. And the board, you know, I read on Facebook this guy was talking about that we hadn't done anything in the last 10 months since the bond. Well, we have. It takes time to develop plans and to make sure you're doing things the right way, because you get the cart ahead of the horse and you mess up. And so we're going through making sure that you know, that we can put a plan together to first and foremost address roofs throughout the district. And we're making progress with that. But it's just like dealing with Williams Ledger. You're dealing with other people. And when you deal with contractors, you're on their time. You're not on yours. You know, if you had all the knowledge and everything, well, you should have went and done it yourself. And we don't. We're educators. We're not roofers. And so we're working on that thing, and hopefully we can turn the page on it. But it is not part of the bond. It is a weather-related endeavor that was caused in our district that will be taken care of through insurance and our deductible, which sets in fund balance.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna bring up the bond, and then you pivoted to fund balance, which was my next point. That's why, if you look at the allocations in fund balance that the board adopted in, I think it was July, there's $11 million in there for insurance deductibles, is because of things like this. How important is that to have those deductibles there in the event that this happens?
Well, you've got $11 million because you got 11 campuses, and there's $1 million deductible on each one of those campuses. And so, feasibly, a hailstorm could come through and damage all the buildings in the school district. And so, if you don't have that sitting there, then you've got to go beg Cadence Bank or somebody to loan you $11 million. And so, the ability to have that there to cover that, to be able to say, hey, that money's sitting there set aside for, bad times is, very much a necessity, given just the volatile weather in the state of Texas. You're on the coast, you got hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
You up north of Dallas, you got more tornado alley. We've got obviously hailstorms through here, and so that's a necessary function of your fund balance, is to adequately put that so that you don't have to go with your hat in your hand and borrow $11 million from the bank.
So that is the update on Williams Ledger. That the adjuster should have more information soon, but other than that, there's really no update. All right, pivoting now to what is still the big talker in town, Bond 2025. And today we're going to focus on Proposition A. So we focused on a lot of the factors that the committee considered during their process in the last 3 episodes. Today I want to focus on Proposition A and addressing some of the misinformation that you and I have seen stem from the community, whether that's in chatting with people, which both of us do as part of our jobs, or via social media. But as we always do, I want to give our disclaimer. We are not able to advocate in any way. We are legally allowed to encourage you to vote. However, Dr. Hawkins and I cannot sit here and legally tell you how to vote. We cannot say vote yes. We cannot say vote no. All we can do is present you with the factual information of the proposal. So that's where I want to take this as we focus on Proposition A. A reminder that you can find all of the information on Bond 2025 at CCISDbond.com. So Proposition A totals $142.3 million. What that provides for is a $107.3 million renovation of Copperas Cove High School, the expansion of the cafeteria on that campus, the addition of a CTE workforce center with student-run storefronts, a $21.9 million Fairview Jewell Elementary renovation, which touches all of the campus that was not renovated in 2019, which was a half to a third of one wing, correct?
Correct.
And it builds a new expanded cafeteria in a central location on campus that would also move some specialty programs into that central location on campus. Then it also provides for a $13.2 million renovation of Copperas Cove Junior High School, where it expands the cafeteria by 4,000 square feet, adds restrooms in the cafeteria to improve student monitoring, and renovates every wing and academic classroom in the building. So when you look at Proposition A, let's start with the behemoth on the proposal, the high school. Let's start with the cafeteria at that. Why, or what was it that led the committee to include this project?
Well, just from their voice is safety, and not only safety, but what is this? And I kept hearing, what is the standard that should be set for the school district? If you drop your kid off, you enroll your kid at Copperas Cove High School, there's certain things that you would think that ought to be applicable to not anything that's out of the ordinary to ask. Yeah, is my kid being taken care of? But there's just some basic needs there, like when it comes time for my kid to eat, does my kid have a place to sit down and eat? and that's not happening. That cafeteria is not built for the student body population in which it serves. And so I think that's the root of it, is trying to say, hey, from the committee standpoint, that they felt like that, every child ought to have a place that to sit down. That's not some type of grandiose want. That's actually was a need from their perspective. And so that's why the expansion of that cafeteria was so prominent in the plan.
Looking at the cafeteria still, you've referred to that, and understandably so. When you've got students who, one, don't have a place to sit, but two, you've got them spread all across the campus to eat, that's a safety issue. It's a student monitoring issue. This, if the voters approved Proposition A, the expanded cafeteria allows one place, all students go here to eat, and it improves student monitoring and student safety in that capacity.
Yeah, I just, you look at, I think a lot of times you look at what other people have, and, it's not like we got a Chevrolet and we're looking for a Cadillac. It's what do people have that's reasonable? And, I came from Livingston, rural East Texas district, half the size of Copperas Cove. But the cafeteria is probably half or twice as big, if not, the Cove cafeteria may be a third as big, but it's definitely, the Livingston cafeteria is definitely twice as big as the Cove cafeteria. Livingston has got about 1,200 kids in the high school. We got 2,300 here at Cove. And so I think that just kind of highlights, what kids have in different parts of the state. And so definitely the expansion of that cafeteria is necessary, and from the standpoint of fulfilling the outcomes of what that committee's plan was trying to do.
The big part of it is the renovation, the reconstruction, and kind of the reconfiguration of the high school campus as a whole, improving that layout and updating that campus. What does that provide for students if voters approve it, and why was that so important to the committee?
I think the parent that told me that her concerns were that, if your school was a hotel, I wouldn't check in. I would not spend the night in your school if it was a hotel. And I think that goes a long way, is that, you've got decor that is well beyond its life cycle. And you say, well, paint and new flooring to fix a lot of that. Well, there's lighting concerns in there. There's the configuration of rooms that trying to meet the needs of different curriculum and programmatic changes that have happened over time. From the CTE perspective, you've got, skills, crafts, and trades that weren't even thought about. And that's what 60% of our high school kids want. They want to be an LVN. They want to be a cosmetologist. And, the facility that we have currently does not allow for that. But beyond that, I would just say that parents, one of the 4 things that when they drop their kid off is that they want their kid in a learning environment that's conducive to optimum learning. And, when you look at the lighting and things like that in that building, it's not conducive to, we got facilities in this district that I could say, hey, we checked the box there. Cove High School, when you look at the lighting and things like that, it's not to the standard of some of our newer buildings.
And then to keep hitting on the high points of it, to avoid dragging this episode on, that CTE expansion, 75-ish thousand square feet of a CTE workforce center with student storefronts. And you've said on this podcast before, go look up Forney ISD's Opportunity Center, and that was the committee's vision when they had these conversations. What does that that CTE Center provide.
Yeah, and it's just a scaled down version because that was a $1.2 billion proposal for 2 high schools.
Yeah.
But it is, in essence, it functions the same way, and that is, that we're not just educating the kids on the skills, crafts, and trades, but it's kind of like this, learning to play 42. Some of y'all may know how to play 42, and you can read a book on playing 42. But you don't really know how to play 42 until you play 42, and you got to get the dominoes on the table. And these skills, crafts, and trades are the same thing. If you're a young man or young lady learning cosmetology, and you're talking about cutting somebody's hair, if you read it in a book and you cut the hair on a dummy, that's one thing. But providing an experience for real world application takes learning to a whole different level. And so providing labs and storefronts to where kids can take their skills that they've learned and push them into their entrepreneurial experiences is crucial, so that when kids do get their diploma and they walk out into the world, they're ready. They're ready on day one. We want our Bulldogs, when an employer sees that they're a graduate of Copperas Cove High School and that they're an LVN, and hey, the hospital in town, I want to hire that person because I know the kids that come out of Cove are ready on day one. I don't have to do on the job training. They're ready to go. That's invaluable to businesses.
So that is the Copperas Cove High School piece, $107.3 million. Moving on to the Fairview Jewell renovation included in Proposition A, this totals $21.9 million. Where do you want to start with that? That one's it's just as extensive of a reconstruction to a smaller campus, with that new cafeteria being the main thing driving it.
Yeah, I think it's once again, it accentuates that the misinformation people, because here's my deal. I want every voter in Cove to have the crystal clear facts and then go make a decision. You either say, this is the standard that we want for our community and our school district, or this is the standard. One of them is voting yes, one of them is voting no, one of them is voting no, one of them is voting yes, whatever. But if I've informed everybody, then my job is done. But misinformation, same bond, same plan. Well, just look at the diagram on the website. It is not the same bond. There was roughly just one wing, a little bit more than a wing there, that was in the last bond. And then you look at Fairview and you look at the plan that's there, and this campus would be internally reworked from one side to the other, even with new construction. Because in the previous plan, there was just a little bridge to nowhere, the linking of a hallway between those two things. And this is actually putting new construction for specials and cafeteria centralized in the middle of the campus, so kids don't have to go from one end of the campus to the other for a service. And so when you look at everything that's going on that campus, this is the most definitive fact that shows if somebody's saying it's the same bond, they're misinformed. They're either saying that from a point of ignorance or from some other agenda. But when you look at the previous bond and you look at this bond and you look at those two footprints side by side, you see that more things are being done at Fairview Jewell than before.
You bring up how far that cafeteria is from that Jewell wing, which was where all of the work proposed in the 2024 bond took place. I walked it this week just to get a gauge of the time, because my job is to communicate with all of this information with the committee, or with the community rather. If you took the shortcut outside and walked at a normal pace, it's a 2.5 minute walk with an adult I'm 6'4.5".
Yeah.
So with my stride, it's 2.5 minutes from the 5th grade hallway on the opposite end of the campus to the door to the Fairview wing. Not to the cafeteria, to the door to the Fairview wing to get to the cafeteria. And so by the time you get 20, 25, somewhere in there, 5th graders across that, it's a lengthy walk, and it eats into their time to eat.
Well, you just think of an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
28-year-olds, and you're trying to get them from point A to point B, and they're as easily distracted as I am. And so they're looking all over the place, and it is a chore to get from one side of the campus to the other. But no more is it a chore than when it's just a child that's running from classroom to the library to get a book, and they have to go outside and run through the elements, because when that campus was built, it was built for 2 schools.
Right.
There was a school on one side and a school on the other side, and then as Cove grew, then those schools become one united school, but the footprint wasn't united. And so there's this big gap there that kids have to go back and forth that, 30 years ago, that wasn't the case. Those kids stayed under that roof in that building all day and they dismissed. But because of growth and the structure and the way things have changed over time, kids do have logistically times during the day that they experience going from one building to the other building, and there's obviously it's not connected.
So that's the Fairview Jewell renovation piece of it. Copperas Cove Junior High, $13.2 million. This is factually the biggest difference in the proposal to me. Is a year and a half ago, the proposal was expansion of the cafeteria, addition of restrooms. That expansion has been increased in this proposal. Those restrooms are still in the cafeteria. And then it touches all 4 wings of a campus that was first built in 1965 as a high school and has been a junior high for the last 40 years. So this campus is handled differently in this proposal as well.
Yeah, I think once again the misinformation, the ignorance of information, or whatever agenda somebody's got, when you lay this plan out and you see that $750,000 was built on toilets versus multi-million-dollar proposal here, and my deal is this, and I continue. People keep coming up with all different proposals now. Well, that was great, but they had an opportunity to be on the committee to brainstorm and be part of the planning process. And so they come up with these proposals, but they don't have the parameters that the committee had, because, look, everybody in this community knows there's a high school problem. But Fairview and Cove Junior High was being left out of the conversation because there's problems there that's identical to the high school. I mean, this was the former high school. And so, to not address it in any shape, form, or fashion, I don't know where the disconnect was or why it was where it was, and don't really care. But I think from the plan that the committee brought, it is more comprehensive. That's a fact. It is more comprehensive, and it addresses the needs of this campus and what wasn't being addressed last time.
This is, to your point, so when my grandfather was stationed on Fort Hood, it was shortly after what is now the high school opened in 1975. And my mom attended junior high there when it was J.L. Williams Junior High. And then went to her freshman, and I can't remember if they PCS'd to Germany during her sophomore year or during her junior year, but started high school where Cove Junior High is now. And education has changed a little bit since then. My mom has worked an entire career as an educator and is now retired since graduating from attending Copperas Cove ISD school. And so when you see this is where Hudson, on the on the podcast a few weeks ago drove home that when you look at the renovations we're proposing and that the committee proposed, it's more of a reconstruction. It's not just coming in with a fresh coat of paint.
Right.
To modernize a junior high, what does that look like in 2025?
Well, probably more like 10 years ago what a high school looked like, because you've got the same CTE classes and the same early awareness and early beginnings of their programmatic choices in the junior high now. We've got multiple opportunities for students to go ahead and start down the path to preparation for their post-secondary experiences. That's being done in the junior high, where used to started thinking about what career you wanted when you was a junior or senior, and now as a 7th and 8th grader you start going down a path. There's high school classes there, and so getting those classes, getting those rooms to where they can support those things is crucially important.
What other myths that we haven't touched on around the bond do you want to address right now?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to go back and talk about why are we not having a new high school. That's on a podcast.
Yep.
We've got that on there. We have there. It is impossible. Okay, so if you think it's not at this point, with the amount of education that we've done on the podcast and everywhere, if you still think it's impossible, come by my office, knock on my door, and we can sit down and have a one-on-one. Or if you want to bring your numbers and I bring my numbers, we can even have a town hall meeting on it. We can schedule it somewhere and record it for everybody to see. So I'm very confident in the architect firms, plural, that I've talked with, the construction firms that I've talked with,
Plural.
and those numbers and what can be done in today's market. But I'll be glad to grovel or debate in order to try to get the facts to where people understand that. But new high school, smaller high school, all those things, financially you've got some limitations, and that's been well documented. And so I think we can turn the page on that and try to focus on the other myths that are coming up. One of the myths that comes up is, you had, if you look back when I started this process, trying to find people to serve on the committee, you had people that were saying, well, I would vote for it, except it's all about athletics. Okay. Well, you just said 142 million is not athletics at all.
Right.
Okay.
That's Proposition A.
And I am, a fan, and my dream is those kids' dreams as far as athletics goes. So I'm not that person. I don't agree with those people, but that was a statement that was made. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer. But 142 million is non-athletics. Okay. So that's Proposition A. But I think part of the misinformation campaign lies over there that just that hey, this is another athletic. Well, it's not. Just look at it. Look on the website. You don't even have to be able to read. You can visually see the graphics and see that Proposition A is non-athletic. So if the last time that was a problem for you, then now there's options there. But I think in addressing the misinformation in Proposition C continues to be misinformation, and it revolves around the reasons why. We've told the reasons why that's out there with the global wet bulb. We've talked about the different organizations and groups that can use that facility. But I know here's one point of misinformation. It is incompetent for somebody to buy turf and finance it for 30 years. Well, first of all, let me say this. Did you buy a house? If you bought a house and financed it for 30 years, there's a good chance that your air conditioning system won't last 30 years. Did you buy a car? If you did you buy tires on it? Because there's a good chance that before you make that 5-year payoff, 6 years, 7-year, wherever you financed it, that those tires will probably wear out around year 3. And so turf is the same way. Number one, turf is more from a standpoint of smart for districts from water consumption. We don't have to water turf. And so water is a scarcity in Central Texas. It's becoming a scarcity all over the United States with the growth of population. But, from a responsibility standpoint to not have to water those fields and everything, that is a responsibility. Financially, the labor, the herbicides that goes in there, the fertilizer that goes in there, it is more cost effective to have turf than it is to have grass. And so those are two things to keep in mind. But here's the deal on turf. The initial investment of turf is like buying a car. You buy your vehicle and you replace your tires along the way. Well, guess what? You don't pay $60,000 or $70,000 every time you replace the tires. Well, the same thing with turf. Turf lasts 10 to 15 years, depending on the baking of the sun. Okay, and so when you look at it from that standpoint, and you just say 10 years. If you have to replace the turf every 10 years, you replace the carpet. You pull the carpet off and you put new carpet down. But the subsoil, the liners, the concrete, everything that goes with it, you don't replace that. You don't start over and buy a new car. You just replace the tires. You just replace the carpet, the top layer. And so it's not as expensive. And it's like I said, every school district in the state of Texas bought, when they passed a bond, they bought air conditioners. And that air conditioners aren't going to last for 30 years. You're going to have to replace them at some point along the way before that bond's paid off. And so it's the same thing here with turf. But you're not having to replace the whole thing. It's just the carpet. And so I think that's a misinformation campaign when people start saying, well, look at who would finance turf for 30 years? Well, you're not financing everything for 30 years. And just like the new section of the CTE Workforce Center there at the high school, there'll be air conditioners that we pay for on that. But those air conditioners aren't going to last 30 years. Somewhere along the way, we'll have to cycle those air conditioners out. It's just the cost of doing business. It's not incompetence, as some people would try to lead you to believe.
So we posted a graphic to social media this week with information about Proposition C, and I know some of what we've talked about with misinformation has come from that, and we'll just practice in the gym. I don't know of a gym in Texas that can fit a 300 person, which is where the band is headed, marching band, where they can rehearse. Wet bulb globe temperature, because I don't think some people understand this. They think air temperature. But it's air temperature, it's relative humidity, it's wind speed, and it's the amount of sunlight that you are participating in your activity in. So if you're in direct sunlight, you have to follow the black and white numbers on this wet bulb globe temperature guideline that the UIL has set. That's very different if you're under a shade structure like an open air pavilion. And just how strict are the wet bulb globe temperature guidelines? I have them up from the UIL website, and it's right there on the UIL website. 82 degrees wet bulb temperature for the region we are in, which is a Class 3 region, and everything in Texas except for the western side of the Permian Basin and the Panhandle, Lubbock, South Plains, Amarillo area. Everything else is a Class 2 region. 82 degrees, you're good, or less than that. 82 to 86.9 degrees wet bulb temperature. You have to provide at least 3 4-minute minimum breaks every hour, and you have to have an on-site rapid cooling zone, which includes either a tub or a tarp. 87 to 90 is maximum practice time, 2 hours. This applies to all outdoor activities, not just football, not just band. If it's an outdoor activity,
track, baseball, JROTC,
outdoor dance rehearsals, it's a lot. Football specifically, no pants during that. Players are restricted to helmet, shoulder pads, and shorts. All sports provide at least 4 separate rest breaks each hour with a minimum duration of 4 minutes each. And when it says all sports, it really means all activities, because the band has to adhere to these as well. The red tier, 90.1 to 92 degrees of wet bulb temperature. Maximum practice time is 1 hour. My basketball practices whenever I was in high school were 2 pushing 3 sometimes, and those were inside. But for football, no protective equipment. There may not be conditioning activities at that point. For all activities, there must be 20 minutes of rest breaks distributed throughout the hour. So essentially what they're saying is you either have to do one 20-minute break when you're in that range, or you have to do a 5th 4-minute break. And then the black tier on the UIL's website, if the wet bulb temperature is above 92.1, no outdoor workouts, delay practices until a cooler wet bulb globe temperature is reached. I'm not a meteorologist. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night either. But to me, that seems pretty strict, and it's designed to protect students.
Yeah, and, Holiday Inn Express is you aging yourself, because now all you got to do is get a Facebook account. And you can figure out.
I have one of those.
Global wet bulb. So you're right. And the people that I've talked to with the open air pavilion says that in the heat, the Texas heat, that the temperature under that thing stays below 90 degrees, and that's the reason for it, and that's where people are trying to get to. If you can stay under 90 with that wet bulb indicator, then you can function. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can function, and I think people, we've always done this, we've always done that. Well, we haven't always had the wet bulb either, and so in high school, I might have had a concussion in a game before, but you know what? You went back in, and that's treated differently today.
We've had more studies. There's more research.
Exactly, and so the same thing with heat related illness and things like that. We're not operating the way that we did 30 years ago. There's more regulations, there's more laws, and so that's why people are trying to do this. And I read somebody was saying that, why did the name change of the open air pavilion? Well, number one, I didn't know that it had changed. I just know that in discussing through the committee, that was the term that the committee, the architects, and everybody used. And so I don't even know what it was in the last bond, so I got to go back and look. But
I communicated that bond, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm kind of at a loss with that. I can't. We don't at this point need to forget about the last bond. This is this bond,
right?
And that's the only thing that's on the ballot to vote. You can't vote for the last bond. You've got to vote for or against this bond. And so, I've talked with Hudson, the architect, about the terminology. It's terminology that they've used elsewhere. There's no sinister plan out there with anything on trying to trick somebody, because if you look on our website, it talks about Proposition C, and it talks about the practice field being artificial turf and this pavilion that's over the top of it. And so I really think at this point you don't even the information is out there to where you don't have to be able to read. You can just look and see and understand what that plan is trying to accomplish. And so, call it what you want, but the reason for it and why it's there. and so forth on that. So hopefully that clears that up.
So I'm going back into my archives because this page isn't live anymore. And so it is pavilion to cover outdoor field.
So that's what it was last time.
Yes.
Well, I think sometimes people just try to muddy the water and confuse things. Maybe they've got some agenda that they do that. Maybe they enjoy doing that as a human being. I don't know why people do some of the things, but like I say, I wasn't here for Bond 2024. I am here for Bond 2025, and I stand behind the facts of what we have talked about and the facts that's on our website. I have gotten those terms from architects and people who are doing this every day, and I really, I don't see the sinister part of this. I think that there's definitely a push and a desire and a want to be transparent.
So the last thing that I'll hit on is the 3 community walk-in talks begin next week. Those dates, Tuesday night, September 23rd, will be Fairview, Jewell. All of these start at 6 p.m. And so Tuesday, the 23rd of September, 6 p.m., Fairview, Jewell, in the gym on the Jewell side of the campus. So come in through the front office, and we'll see you in the gym. Monday, September 29th, 6 p.m., Gym 2 at Copperas Cove High School. So enter through the front entrance there as well. And then on Monday, October 6th, will be Copperas Cove Junior High in the cafeteria. We are encouraging everyone to come in through the front there as well. So those are the 3 community walk-in talks. You'll be able to get your questions answered about the projects that you have questions about from people who are in those situations day in and day out. You'll be able to tour the campuses and see for yourself and make a decision for yourself. Those 3 dates all on the Bond website. For more information on Bond 2025, we encourage you to visit www.ccisdbond.com. Again, that's ccisdbond.com. Other key dates to remember: October 6th is the deadline to register to vote in the November election. That's not just for the bond election. That is anything on the ballot for you as a voter in the state of Texas in November. That deadline, October 6th. October 20th is the first day of early voting. Halloween is the last day of early voting. And November 4th is Election Day. All of those dates, again, at ccisdbond.com. Dr. Hawkins, as we wrap things up, let's look forward. What do you got?
I think, excitement, about, the great things that's going on here in Cove. I'm extremely excited about that. I'm excited. I want anybody that wants me, if you've got a club, a group, or an organization, reach out to me. Let me talk to you about the concerns. Let me talk to you about your questions. Be glad to come and visit. I've got a lot of things, a lot of community meetings and groups that's already booked. But really, I'm a guy that likes to talk about the progress of the school and the things that are going on, the facts of this bond. I'm pretty passionate and an open book about the district, and I would love to talk to you. So if you want me to come to one of your organizations or something other like that and talk, I'd be glad to do that.
You haven't turned anybody down at this point, and after having worked with you for several months, I don't think that's in your nature.
No, I think the success of any district is the combined ownership of the community, and I want to engage as many people as possible to come be a part of what we're trying to do. I think the survival of education as we know it is very fragile. In the state of Texas, I think we've got great things happening. There's great things on the horizon, but it's going to require the ownership of everyone.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I just think I'd end on this because I think it's become, I'm a throw the skunk on the table kind of guy. And I think that, I've heard from several people that this wasn't part of the issue with the bond last time. and that's the whole taxing thing. And I just hit on that. If I could change the format of the way taxes operated in the state of Texas, I'd do so. There needs to be more streams attached to funding than everything burdening the property tax owner. And I understand that. You've got a county that proposed a 21% increase in taxes. I think that's been rolled back some. You've got the city that's proposed a tax on the streets, and all those things. And I'm not here to throw rocks at any of those things, but I think what is the difference between what we're trying to do and what is being done on the city and the county is this. This is the only way that schools viably can build facilities. And we've got 52-year-old facilities. They're at the end of their lifespan. We haven't had a bond passed in over 20 years. And so there's 20 years of low taxing. If you look at the taxes of Temple and Belton and Killeen and those people, very much higher taxing in those communities than what we're doing here. But the point that I would drive home to you is the bond is a capital project. And my wife doesn't listen to this, so I'll give you an analogy on this, And I've said this before. The difference in those taxes are this: the taxes that are being proposed or those other entities are kind of the maintenance and operations of what they're doing. It'd be like my wife going to HEB, and she spends tons of money at HEB. But me, I'm trying to save my money and buy something big. She's happy with Amazon. I'm happy with big purchases. Well, this is a big purchase. It's two different things. This is not the normal operations of our district. We're balancing budgets. We're using the tax dollars that we have per student to go as far as we can with them. And so, like I said, this is facilities, and this is a total different thing from what the city and county is doing. Totally. Number one, because you get an opportunity to have your say. You can vote for it or against it. And so I just say that over 20 years, every 10 years in a normal rotation, districts pass a bond to address the needs of students. We haven't done that. And now it's come time that we either figure out what standard that we're going to operate in our district on or not. But I would just draw a distinction about the difference in the entities and what's trying to be accomplished.
Okay, so we will see all of you next week at the first of the Bond 2025 Community Walk and Talks. But before that, we'll see all of you under the lights tonight, whether it's the lights of Bulldog Gymnasium, 5 o'clock, as Lady Dog Volleyball continues District 12 6A play, or if at Bulldog Stadium, where we announce the homecoming court and then celebrate the 3-1 non-district slate. I'm going to channel your inner Joe Namath over here, and as the Dogs face off against Del Valley out of the Austin area tonight. Dr. Hawkins, appreciate your time.
God bless and go Dogs.
For Superintendent Dr. Brent Hawkins, I'm Director of Communications Kurtis Quillen saying thanks for joining us on Take 2 with Hawk. We'll see you next time. Good night, and go Dogs.